You receive a document with a digital signature that checks out as valid. The math confirms the signature matches the file. However, that validity does not inherently guarantee the file's contents are trustworthy. An attacker who exploits the underlying math can generate the same signature for two entirely different files, a benign contract and a malicious one. This vulnerability is a result of how cryptographic hashes operate. A hash function takes an infinite range of possible inputs, files of any size, and compresses them into a fixed, finite string of bits. Because the output space is finite and the input space is infinite, the pigeonhole principle dictates a mathematical certainty. Multiple different inputs will eventually produce the exact same output. To crack a system by finding an input that matches one specific, predetermined hash, you must execute a pre-image attack, a task requiring massive computation. But if you only need to find any two inputs that produce a match, you are executing a collision attack. By searching for a general collision rather than a specific target, an attacker bypasses the need to decrypt secrets. Instead, they gain the ability to manipulate the structural reality of the data itself. This is the birthday paradox. In a group of only 23 people, there is a 50% chance two of them share a birthday. This isn't a quirk of social gatherings. It is a rigid probability law that reduces the required search space for matching pairs. This equation shows how that probability law applies to cryptography. The complexity to find a match drops. Instead of 2 to the power of n operations, an attacker only needs 2 to the power of n divided by 2. The birthday bound effectively halves your security. To understand why this reduction occurs, we will deconstruct the foundational math behind collision search. Then, we will analyze how cryptanalysts weaponize these theories in real-world exploits like the Flame malware. Finally, we will resolve the conflict between theoretical physics and classical hardware, showing why quantum computers are not the primary collision threat facing modern infrastructure. The general birthday formula dictates that for a state space of size t, achieving a 50% collision probability requires evaluating only 1.177 times the square root of t samples. This comparison shows how hash bit lengths translate to actual security. The classical state space suggests one level of protection, but the birthday collision column reveals a much lower threshold. Look at MD5. It implies 2 to the 128th complexity, but actual collision resistance is only 2 to the 64th. A common architectural error is the assumption that hashing data twice, such as implementing double SHA-256, fixes these collision vulnerabilities. Hash functions are deterministic. If input X and input Y produce the same output on the first hash, then applying a second hash to those identical outputs will yield another identical match. Simple repetition cannot patch a weak algorithm. The boundary of 2 to the n over 2 is absolute, and it cannot be bypassed without physically increasing the base bit length of the hash function. In the field, collisions appear in two forms. The first is an identical prefix collision. Here, the attacker controls the shared starting block of a file and relies on mathematical garbage data to force the final hash outputs to match. These attacks are computationally cheap but limited. The garbage data required to force the collision typically corrupts the visual rendering of the document, making the forgery detectable to a human reader. The practical threat is the chosen prefix attack. Here, the attacker has full control over the initial differing data of two entirely separate files, allowing them to build collision blocks around distinct semantic content. Chosen prefix attacks turn collisions into devastating weapons. They allow for the forgery of completely distinct documents, from executable code to legal contracts, while still maintaining a perfectly valid cryptographic signature. In 2012, the Flame malware targeted legacy Windows XP environments. Its goal was to spoof a terminal server licensing certificate, which would allow the malware to bypass security and execute as an official operating system update. To achieve this, attackers built a chosen prefix collision targeting the certificate structure using MD5. They formulated two distinct headers, injecting 64 birthday bits as steering vectors into a metadata field to manipulate the internal rounds until the mathematical states converged. The Windows Crypto API did not validate the non-standard issuer unique ID field. This allowed the collision blocks to persist within the certificate structure without triggering syntax errors or integrity failures. 5 years later, researchers at CWI Amsterdam and Google applied this same methodology to the SHA-1 algorithm in the Shattered project. Instead of certificate extensions, the researchers placed the SHA-1 collision blocks inside the non-rendered metadata of a PDF file. The result were two PDFs with completely different visual payloads, generating the exact same SHA-1 digest. These projects stand as documented cryptoanalytic breakthroughs that superseded the security assumptions of their respective eras, requiring massive, highly parallel compute clusters to execute. These attackers do not break the hashes directly. They exploit file format flexibility to conceal the mathematical debris generated by a 2 to the n/2 collision. As hardware conquer ND5 and SHA-1, many assumed the next threat to hashing would come from quantum computing. Grover's algorithm provides a quadratic speedup for search, but operates strictly serially within a coherent circuit. This limits its practical speed compared to parallel classical systems. To target hash collisions, the Broussard-Hoyer-Tapp, or BHT algorithm was proposed. BHT combines the birthday paradox with quantum amplitude amplification. Theoretically, BHT reduces collision search complexity down to O of 2 to the n/3. However, cryptanalysts like Daniel J. Bernstein have noted that the raw operation count of BHT ignores the massive physical costs of the hardware required to run it. BHT requires quantum random access memory, or QRAM, capable of maintaining 2 to the n/3 coherent targets simultaneously. Maintaining that level of coherence requires hardware infrastructure that currently defies known engineering physics. In stark contrast, standard classical hardware is highly stable and already mass-produced today. Instead, modern attackers use the parallel row method. This utilizes millions of cheap hashing cores running concurrently, tracing hash chains until they hit distinguished points, requiring minimal memory. We are comparing a theoretical quantum architecture that cannot yet be built against the reality of sprawling, efficient classical compute clusters that exist today. When evaluating true hardware economics, classical parallelization remains a more immediate threat to hash functions than theoretical quantum algorithms. Defending against a collision attack requires a mathematical response. You must increase the hash bit length until even the halved 2 to the power of n/2 complexity exceeds the bounds of classical brute force. Migrating to SHA-256 or SHA-3 is the non-negotiable baseline. Their output spaces are large enough that even the birth-due reduction leaves an impossible workload for modern hardware. This architectural diagram shows mitigations beyond larger hashes. For data transmission, raw hashing is replaced by hash-based message authentication codes, or HMAC. HMAC integrates a secret symmetric key, K, directly into the hashing process. Because the attacker lacks the secret key, they cannot pre-compute offline collision tables. This neutralizes the birthday attack vector for transmission protocols. Understanding these mechanics is the first step toward effective security architecture. As we've seen, technical errors like double hashing occur when the underlying math is ignored. A strategic leader uses this technical depth to make informed trade-offs. By distinguishing between theoretical quantum bottlenecks and the physical reality of classical compute, a leader can direct resources toward mitigations that address actual hardware economics rather than academic curiosities. Moving from a technical role to a strategic leadership position requires this level of foresight. It is the ability to architect infrastructure that withstands both current and future threats before automation commoditizes your expertise. To bridge this gap between technical expert and security leader, you must read The Next Gen Information Security Professional. This book is essential reading for anyone interested in security careers, leadership, and professional development. You can find it at the link provided below.